welcome back to episode 2 of Mindustry PvP on the Eviction server. This episode will be a little bit different because I got 2 battles back to back, which happened one right after the other, that I'll show. And each battle will be a little bit shorter. I'll be a little better at cutting some of the boring stuff out this time. But yeah. I'm kind of doing my standard opening right here, and I've gotten a little bit better since the last video with my opening. It's a little bit more refined, but there's still a lot more work I need to do. But one key difference I'm doing different this time is I'm going for a unit factory before I go for my tungsten drill. And I started doing that because I started realizing I was running out of power before I was even ready for tungsten. So this will help me get my first hex, which will give me additional power faster. So that's the plan. So there we are, placing my first tungsten bore. We're like a minute and maybe 2 minutes into the match, so it's still pretty quick. I changed it up because I realized I would always run out of power, and when I ran out of power, my tungsten board didn't actually make that much of a difference. So something I usually do that I messed up in this video is I usually try to hand mine beryllium more, so I don't run into this problem, and I also try to set up graphite and more additional silicon right after this. Right after I set up my big board, but I got caught up with some of the economy stuff. I also didn't make enough beryllium, as you can see. So right there, I'm checking out my neighbor. He's really not any further along than I am right now, so I think I'm okay at the moment. The early game of Mindustry, especially on this server, is you want to be keeping pace with your opponents. The second you start falling apart, you're gonna start having a rough time if you stay behind. But if you're able to keep pace with them, then you will have a pretty fair chance. It'll come down to other things rather than just your setup. 4 minutes in the match, just skipped ahead. And finally, I'm setting up my first oxide chamber. And because I was foolish and didn't make enough beryllium bores, it was definitely slower this time. I can usually pump out an oxide chamber definitely like about at least a minute faster than I did this game. And all that comes because I just didn't make enough beryllium bores, which is obviously really important. And another mistake I made here is I went for a second oxide chamber instead of saving up the oxide for my big plasma bore for my tungsten bore. Now the logic behind that is that I wanted to make up for lost time with the oxide, because it took me forever to set up my oxide chamber, and the longer it took me to set up the longer it takes to set up my oxide chamber, the longer it takes to build up the oxide to make a large plasma bore. So that was my logic there, and it actually paid off now because I actually do have enough tungsten to make a large plasma bore, but usually when I do that, it doesn't work. In this case, it worked because I had enough tungsten to make a large plasma bore, so I was able to make up for lost time a little bit there. Deconstructing my my impact drill to save on power, because its power is crucial, is a very valuable resource this early in the game. We're just hitting the 6-minute mark in the game right now. Got my second oxide chamber up. I had putting down my second large plasma bore. That's pretty good speed, at least for me. Looking at my neighbor, he is slightly behind me. He also has 2 large plasma bores, but he's probably running out of beryllium or something because he's having trouble putting down a second oxide chamber. So I know I'm a little bit ahead. Still running out of beryllium, so I set up more beryllium with the intent, I think, to put up a bigger oxide chamber. This is my setup for the large oxide chambers, because each oxide chamber uses 1 electrolyzer. So setting up 2 electrolyzers so I can have 4 oxide chambers, which I will need later in the game. Still hurting on resources. I don't have very much tungsten. It would be nice to have. Yeah, as you can see, I don't have the most amount of silicon. If I try to make a big factory right now, I will run out of silicon. I don't have the most amount of graphite either. This was a little bit of a rough start. And kind of the reason why, one of the things I hope that we can learn, one of the reasons I share this is I'm hoping that people can learn from these videos. Mistakes, things that work well, stuff like that. There's my oxide chamber. I haven't ever really put too much thought into placement. If you think about it, that's really not the best spot for it. I'll have to do a lot of pipe routing. I have to move up the ozone, and I have to I guess it's not that bad, but I still have to move up the ozone and take out the oxide, and it's kind of a pain trying to get over the ducts when they're not constructed, because you can't just drag over a blueprinted duct and have it bridge, so you have to do that manually. Kind of a pain. And there we go, I'm running out of tungsten again. Like I said, I would. Honestly, Sling of Run is just incredibly difficult to have a perfect opening. There's so many mistakes you can make. If you make one mistake, you're basically going to be running out of beryllium, or tungsten, or oxide, or anything, and you're going to be stuck hand mining, not able to build what you want to build. And it's so easy to make a mistake. So easy. Then that's the 10-minute mark. Looking at my neighbors, they're mostly in pace with me. I realize that they're setting up economy right now, so right now would be a great time for me to get a head start on unit production. That would give me a pretty big advantage right now. Now, what's wrong with this schematic is it's very hard to find a spot to build it. Every single time I try to use it, I end up looking for a spot for it for like freaking forever. I finally found one, but like as you can see, I was barely able to place it because the graphite is like right like 1 block away from me blocking it, and it's a very clunky schematic, so I should have more backups. Oh, this is a new schematic I designed. This is different than the other one that you saw in the last episode. This one still isn't great, but it's better. It's a step in the right direction. It has a built-in tungsten bore, which I never made my own schematics using that because I don't know why. I just didn't think about it. But then I saw other people doing that where they have built-in bores into the schematic, and it just saves so much time. Like, so much time and headache. It's one less input you have to worry about. I also don't like that you can't copy blueprinted schematics or blocks. That bugs me all the time. So at the 13-minute mark, I'm finally able to get my 5 big schematic almost up and running. A couple clogs, but nothing too major. Just putting on the finishing touches. The important thing is that it's going now. Just needs more beryllium. Right here at the 14-minute mark, I decide I'm going to go for my Anthicus schematic. I'm also running out of power. And I do this because Anthicus is a great support unit. Something I have learned very recently the hard way is you can't just have an army of Anthicuses for your first encounter with someone if they have a locust blob. It doesn't work. Period. So I'm making an Anthicus factory after I make my tank factory up and running, which was a very good choice in this scenario. If I could get my T3 factory up and running even faster than I do, then I can go straight for T3, which is what which is what I do a lot of the time. It's a very, very aggressive tactic, and you have to attack with them right away. You can't let your opponent build up defenses. Your first Anthicus has to be used right out of the gate if you want it to be effective. And I haven't mastered that strategy yet. I'm still practicing. I haven't gotten there yet, but here it'll be a great support for my army. I also realized I messed up the beryllium intake. I'm gonna fix that real quick. Okay, at the 19-minute mark, I was able to get my Anthicus factory up and running, fully up and running. It took me 5 minutes to set up, definitely way slower than I would have liked, but that's okay, it's how it goes sometimes. Now, while I'm increasing unit production, my opponent is setting up defenses, which is always a very good position for me to be in. If you do it right. If you do it right, it's a very good position to be in. Because while you're increasing your overall production, they're just sitting there trying not to get obliterated by you. Which sometimes, if you play it wrong, that can definitely hurt you really bad. But if you do it right, it's a very good position strategically to be in. Because they kind of walled themselves off. They can't really expand without expanding the defenses, which also takes more time. In addition to that, that's just wasted time on their part. And sometimes it's the right move for them to do, right? They don't have another choice. But from a strategical perspective, I would rather be increasing unit production while my opponent is increasing defenses. And that's exactly what's happening here. And then I see my opponent over to the west has some stuff. I think he has just T1s. I don't think he has anything I'm too worried about, but I don't want him sneaking in and taking a core while I'm distracted with my other enemy, which, if you saw the last episode, is exactly what happened last episode. So I was more careful. I learned from that. So. I was much quicker to set up this T3 factory. It's not done yet, but I'm already much quicker at getting it up and running. So I noticed he has definitely larger locust production than I do. He had a 6-wide locust factory, at least, and I'm pretty sure he has more in it as well. So if I'm gonna beat him, I have to fight him not in a head-on locust fight. Which isn't my style anyways. I don't like doing that. Cool, I'm making some precepts. It's very good for breaching through defenses. I usually send in precepts as the bait for everything to shoot at, including Afflicts and Titans, and then my locusts tear everything apart, everything else apart, while my Anthrakists support by usually killing their locusts or whatever else they have left. It's a pretty decent strategy. T Precepts are a little underwhelming compared to T4s. The T4s are very helpful, very good, but you get a lot less of them, so it's kind of a trade-off. T4s are always more worth it if you have the resources in the economy to go for them, but I didn't want to mess with Carbide right now. I knew I had to strike soon before he started putting up some serious defenses. For me, what I've seen is the first contact with the enemy as very crucial, because from what I've seen, it always escalates from there. It never dies down and gets picked up back up again, or at least rarely. It always escalates. As you can see, I was a little arrogant with bringing my Anthrakists in. I definitely lost like 3 or 4 of them, which I could have easily avoided if I just, yeah, he's going for the 4. That was a bad move on my part. Now that I have gained control over this core, it'll act as a launch point for an assault into the rest of his base, because the terrain was prohibiting me earlier. But now it'll also take a lot of effort on his part to take this core back, and he doesn't currently have the resources. I mean, if he struck now, I don't have enough troops in there right now, but he is not moving in for an attack yet, so it gives me time to really set up my defenses. And kind of what I was saying earlier is he has to set up even more defenses now, because the hex with all of the power in it is completely undefended. Now he has to spend time fortifying that same hex. So I definitely have a pretty large advantage right now. He has defender's advantage, but I have higher unit production because I spent more time doing that instead of fortifying. So I made another foolish decision. He had a lot more units than I did. That core is very undefended in the top. He could very easily go for that. Yeah, I'm just making a bunch of mistakes here. I'm leaving my cores all vulnerable. Thankfully, I do have my precepts to help with everything. But yeah, he's moving in for the other core now too. It looks like we ended up okay. I would say that was kind of out of luck that we ended up okay on that exchange. He doesn't have his Titan online yet, so I'm trying to rush him before he gets that online and he gets that defender's advantage. I'm trying to spread out my locusts, but obviously it wasn't working very well. I mostly contribute that to the way commanding units works on Erekir, or just Mindustry in general. It's pretty bad. I was trying to separate my locusts though, so that the Titan doesn't hurt as many of them as it did, but I'm just excited for the next update, where the RTS aspects of the game will get an update. That will be very nice. So this core is very vulnerable. I can move in my troops right now, but that would also, while I'm moving them in, that would make me vulnerable because he has more locusts than I do at the moment. So if I were to move in right now, that would put me in slight danger of losing that core. I decided I want to wrap around, hit him from another angle. That's what Anthrakists are very good at, is you can hit them from many different angles. The problem with that is you have to spread your Anthrakists out, which makes them much more squishy and vulnerable, which is one of the bigger weaknesses I've found with them. I want to get that T3 factory offline. I don't want him to build up a huge number of precepts. That doesn't sound very fun to me dealing with all that. So I have an advantage right here. I'm trying to keep my units away from the center of the core, so if he tries to go for a core snipe, I can pull them out quickly. He doesn't have enough units for a core snipe. I can move some in and securely fortify this hex. He can attack me from the hex to the left of this core I'm defending, but that would also mean he has to abandon that other core, which would allow me to move some of more of my troops in. He's doubling down on the defense of that core, which exposes this bottom core. And at this point, it's just a waiting game. I pretty much won. I have all the advantages. He's restricted to basically defending one core, which I can just lay siege to anyways once I wrap around all the way and completely surround that base. And yeah. Going for a core snipe, I pull my Anthicus out. I try to pull my units while I can. I use my locusts to stall so I can save my T3s. He's going to sacrifice basically everything he has in this one assault. So, regardless of what happens, it's going to work out for me. So, yeah, there it goes. And yeah, that's pretty much game. Also, guys, don't make your T4 factories in a completely vulnerable hex. Just don't do it. And on to the next match. So this match, I fast forwarded a couple minutes just because it's the same exact opening. I just go for the same basic resources. I go for my unit factory, the second thing I do, etc. This game is a little bit different because we have Daki from last game, we have Ulpence, and we also have Carl, and those are the people playing, I believe, this round. So going for my second Silicon Factory. I'm hoping to avoid some of the some of the issues I ran into last game where I kept running out of resources. This game is definitely better. I have more boars, beryllium, silicon, etc. I also got my unit factory up and running way quick. This is a pretty ideal opening. Trying to get a very aggressive start. I'm looking to see if I can go for that because I know I need it if I want to win against Ulpence. Acquire the resources for it. I start building that anyways. Let's see Ulpence. He appears to be AFK right now, so I don't worry about him at the moment. I check out my other opponents. They are in a fist fight right now, so they are not doing too well in the economy. So I am in a very good spot. Here is the 10-minute mark. I'm checking out my opponents, and I see there is a T4 factory being set up right now. So, that's real great. So right now, I am trying to get across the map as quickly as possible, and I'm making very good pace. Because that T4 factory cannot come up online. If it comes up online before I get over there, then everybody else loses, and it's game over. Okay, so finally I can skip to the good part. He starts building defenses, moving stuff in. I don't have very many locusts up here, so he has an advantage at the moment. However, I do have locusts, so that's a pretty good advantage on my part, but I don't have very many. So he's trying to do what he can while he can. Because as soon as I get more locusts over here, it's game over for him. Trying to go for the core snipe, he moves his stalls in, so I take that advantage and move in. But I did not see his supplement had Cyanogen in it, so it just completely melted my tanks. I did not I definitely underestimated how freaking fast it melts through tanks. And at this point, you might think it's game over. It's not game over, because if he does manage to, if I do screw up this fight, and he does manage to basically pick off my tanks, I do have more coming in, but I'll give him time to make additional defenses to the point where I can't do much going right now. He doesn't have the greatest economy because he's really rushing for that T4, but he's a very good player, so I guarantee if I left him alone for a couple minutes, he would be like come up with something. So my answer is just keep the pressure on. And there we go. So his options are very limited right now. His T4 factor is technically online, but obviously he's not going to be able to do much with that. So that is pretty much game, especially since I get to invite him to my team. And yeah, so that's pretty much game. The only reason I really beat him this round, because he's way better than I am, is just because he went for a atypical opening. He went for a T4 rush, which obviously, if I can help it, I'm not going to let that happen, especially since I had only a freaking T2 factory up and running. So, yeah. But that is the episode. Thank you for watching. If you want me to skip these endings where I kind of clean up the match, that's kind of what I figure I should do, is just skip the ending where I just kind of clean up the match. Like right now, there's still 2 opponents in the game, but I have a rather large advantage since it's a 2v1. That's not exactly fair, so I have a pretty large advantage. The game's pretty much over for them. There are some interesting things that happen though with defending and all that, but it's pretty much over. So if you guys do want to see like the rest of these matches, let me know, but otherwise I'll just keep cutting them out. But thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.